What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to week 10 of the Axial Honcho budget build. This week, we're going to tackle a new set of rock sliders. Now, I know last week I said that I was going to look at doing a little bit of paint on the body. I went and bought the paint and sat here and thought about it, and I still just couldn't come up with the design that I wanted to do. The best one that I could think of was completely just ripping off Hemi-Storm's design. Really looked good. If you've never seen that video, I'll link it for you guys below. But this week, what I decided to do is install those Scaler Fab Rock Sliders that I showed way back when we installed that Scaler Fab front bumper. Now, alongside the install of these new Scaler Fab Rock Sliders, I've got a freebie mod as well that directly applies to their install. The big downside of installing a new set of rock sliders onto one of the Axial SCX10-2s is that you lose that built-in waterproof receiver box. A lot of people are really concerned with staying waterproof, and I get that. It's a valid concern. For me, I don't run in a lot of water. I just don't like to. But if you're that guy, I think that we should still take a look at those things to make sure that the parts that I'm suggesting could still work out for you. Now, these Scaler Fab Rock Sliders are a perfect fit for this truck. They're already installed on the driver's side, even though you may not even be able to see them when you're just looking at it. The reason is that they sit perfectly at the edge of the door, and they run from the very front edge of the wheel well to the very back side of the cab. Perfect length, perfect width, everything is just super clean. But they have the huge advantage of having a very nice, smooth steel bottom. So these things are gonna slide great on the rocks and get rid of all of the hang points that the stock SCX10-2 sliders have with that ribbed design. On the other side of the chassis here, you can see that we've got the nice, smooth skid plate on that Scaler Fab side versus the ribs and ridges that the stock ones have that are definitely likely to hang up when you're in the rocks. Now, in all transparency, I do want to say that there is one downside, and that is that we've got these rock sliders in there, but now those inner fender wells that we make don't go all the way down to those rock sliders. These things didn't cost us hardly anything other than a little bit of time. So if I was really worried about the gap, and if I notice that I can start seeing it in video, I may redo those. It'll cost me another couple bucks worth of Tupperware. But for now, I think that the upsides of installing these rock sliders far outweigh that little gap that I've got. Another benefit to these Scaler Fab Rock Sliders is that they've got some upper link adjustment locations. Now, if you're big into performance and tuning, these are going to be a nice feature for you. It's going to allow you to move the upper links around a little bit to adjust your anti-squat. Now, if you're not familiar with what anti-squat is, there is a lot you could learn. You can watch tons of videos, read tons of articles. It applies from full size to the RC world, and it can drastically change the way that your truck climbs. By adjusting the height of the upper link, it affects how the rear suspension of your vehicle pushes the weight of your truck. And it has to do with where the upper and lower links theoretically meet out in space, as if you were to take those lines and just infinitely extend them until they meet. Now, depending on if where those lines meet are above or below the center of gravity of your truck, whether or not the suspension will try to separate from the body when under load, or if it will try to squat against the body when it's under load. Both of those have very different effects when you're climbing, and what you feel is better versus what someone else feels is better is a lot of personal preference. But these things will allow you to move that around. You can play with it, you can experiment, and you can find out what you like. So by all means, get a set, learn a little bit about anti-squat, and try it out. Tuning suspension is a lot of fun if that's something that you enjoy. If that's not something you enjoy, put the link in the stock location and run it just like it was. These rock sliders support that as well. Now let's jump into the installation of these, show you how they go on, how I'm relocating some things, and get into that freebie modification to keep this truck waterproof. The first thing we have to do is remove everything from the stock sliders, including the ESC, which is double-sided taped on, and the receiver that's inside of that waterproof receiver box. I'm going to disconnect the ESC and servo wires from that tactic receiver. Then I'm going to pry that receiver out. With everything removed from these stock sliders, now we're going to remove the screws that hold them to the chassis on the underside. Now, this stock slider was only attached with 3 screws, 2 M3 and 1 M2.6. We are not going to reuse that front M2.6, but we are going to replace that screw into the chassis because it holds one of the cross braces. Now, these new Scaler Fab pieces actually also use the screws that hold the upper links to the chassis. So we're going to also have to loosen up those upper link screws that we've got in the chassis before we can install these new sliders. Now, with the upper link screws out of the way, we can attach the rock sliders onto the chassis. So now during the installation of this new rock slider, we obviously don't have that waterproof receiver box anymore. But rather than just placing the receiver onto these rock sliders, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our stock rock slider and I'm going to go turn this into a receiver box that we can use on our own set of new rock sliders. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the die grinder and sander, and we're going to basically just cut away all of the excess, everything that we don't need. It's going to go away, and I'm going to turn this into something that I can reattach to this set of sliders so that we don't lose our waterproof rating. And now we have a separate waterproof receiver box that we can use without having to buy anything different, but allowing us to use a completely new set of sliders. Now, we really don't have room for this receiver box on the driver's side like was shown before, so I'm going to move it over to the passenger side. Rather than just double-sided taping this to the other side of the rock slider, I'm going to make a small plate that goes on the bottom, and I'm going to attach it to the two rails on this Scaler Fab Rock Slider. The reason I'm going to do that is because I'll attach that plate with a couple of zip ties. This will allow me to cut those zip ties off and move this out of the way so that I can get to all of the hardware here without having to rip off the double-sided tape and reinstall it every time that I want to get to that skid plate. And that does it for all of the upgrades on the Honcho this week. Super simple installs as far as those rock sliders go, removing a few screws, throwing a few on there, but retaining that waterproof receiver box I think is a nice added bonus for those of you guys who like to run in the water. So we're 10 weeks into this thing, and if you add up all that budget, it is sizable, even though this thing doesn't look that far from stock. But we've got a lot of things on here that definitely improve the looks, the handling, the performance, and the durability of this car. These budget builds are extremely intensive to do. It's a lot of work to shoot and edit a video every week while getting these things done with all of the other projects that we both have going on. So make sure you go check out Matt's video and throw a comment on it. We both really appreciate all of the comments and likes and support that we've got on this entire series. I still haven't got around to doing any of those appearance modifications to the body that I was looking to do. I just haven't found what I'm really looking for yet, but I'll keep thinking about it. I don't want to do it until I'm really excited about the direction that I'm going to go though. But with all of that covered, thank you again for all of the likes, comments, subscribes, all of the messages. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast to do this series so far. I'm looking forward to the weeks ahead still. And with that, guys, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you aren't already, and I'll see you on the next one.